Lauren, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time during your lunch break while you're working.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries at all. So, for those that don't know, Lauren, you work in a school as a school counsellor, and you've recently got involved in our giveaway, which is great, and I hope to see a few more entries from you as well.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely.
and I wanted to talk to you because I know that next week, Monday the 8th, children are going to be going back to school, and it's going to be quite a big change both to their lives and also to their parents' lives. You know, they've
Yeah.
spent so long in what's been a very strange environment during the pandemic. So I wanted to get some of your insights. So to start with, for those watching, can you just tell us a bit more, sorry, about what it is you're qualified in and what it is you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I initially went to uni and did a undergrad in psychology, and then once I qualified in that, I decided to do a master's in counselling and psychotherapy, which qualified me to be a counsellor or a therapist with children and young people, which is a demographic I really wanted to work with. And so basically my job is providing emotional support and that kind of is in lots of different ways to children, so from 4 years old to 18, so I work in both a primary and a secondary. Obviously the way I work with different age children varies, but yeah, essentially I provide emotional support for children and young people.
And I mean, this is an area that's of interest to me as well, because I think we're seeing slowly people become more aware of actually the impact mental health is having on everyone, but also on children, and the importance of them learning about it at a younger age as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find in your role that, or how does it work? Do the children come to you, or do they have set lessons or classes or time with you already planned?
So it varies depending on the individual. So it might be that a parent or a teacher has a concern and the child gets referred to me. As the child gets a bit older and kind of from maybe year 5 onwards, they are a bit more aware of themselves and if they're struggling, and so they can then self-refer. I do kind of lessons around psychoeducation, so anxiety, mindfulness, that kind of thing too. But for the most part, it is one-to-one sessions if a teacher or a parent is concerned. But the key is with any kind of counselling is that the child or young person has to want to come. So it's their decision, and it's a place where they have full autonomy and choice. And it's, yeah, a safe place for them to come and get support for however they're feeling.
No, that's great. And it's really great that you're doing that as well. I'm sure you have a huge impact on their lives.
Yeah, it's a
Even being
very
available.
Yeah, it's a rewarding job, and I mean, it's quite unusual to have a counsellor in a primary school, and I think going back to what you were saying about more people are becoming aware of the need for mental health support for children and young people. There's still a huge discrepancy between the need and what is provided, and I think a lot of adults dismiss children as having issues. They see them as very resilient, and I think a lot of the time children are struggling. They just it's not something they verbalize. It either comes across in poor attention or poor behavior or acting out. It's not very often a child will say, I'm really worried about XYZ.
And I suppose depending on the age, it's not always something they know how to verbalize.
No, of course not.
Unless
No, that's
they ask the
something.
right questions.
Exactly, yeah, and a lot of my work with the really young ones is through play, because they don't have the emotional intelligence yet, because that comes with development, to verbalize or understand how they're feeling, and so a lot of that is processed through play.
Oh, nice. And you mentioned as well briefly about the parents, if they may refer someone, their child, to you if they think there's something that needs to be looked at or discussed. How much involvement do you have with the parents? Because the reason I ask is, as I mentioned, next week their environment's going to change as well as the children's, and I think especially for younger children, where they've spent so much time with their parents, that will likely have a bigger impact. But I'd just like to delve into your views on, what can they do, that the parents, for the children? What can the children potentially be doing to help them cope with what's going to be quite a significant change?
Yeah, it's a big transition, isn't it? And I think this past year has been a huge transition for everyone, obviously, but I think especially for children and young people, their lives have changed dramatically.
Yeah.
At the start of the first lockdown, I provided a lot of support for parents, especially in the primary school, where the children were really young and didn't fully understand why school was closing and why we had to go into these, go into ourselves. So I was involved then, and then of course we're seeing a similar pattern now. We've been back and forth with schools being open. It's been a really uncertain time for children, and for the most part, school is a place of stability. It's a place where children feel safe, irrespective of what their home lives are. And so for that to be taken away from them, that's really hard. That's really unsettling. So first time round with the lockdown, it was all about kind of encouraging parents to have routines, to reassure, to empathize with the child, understand that they might be worried or things might feel difficult, and that that's where kind of activity comes into, especially with children going from being very active at school, playtimes, walking between lessons, to sat in front of a desk, and then parents are confused as to why the child can't concentrate for 7 hours a day sat in front of a screen. It's because they're not used to it. That's not how life has been for them. So plenty of exercise, fresh air walks, because they're missing PE and they're missing playing with their friends. And I think it's going to be the same thing this time round, although it's almost the reverse, because they're coming back into school. That's still a transition. For most children and young people, that will be a positive change, but a change of any capacity is hard and it is stressful. So even if they're looking forward to it, it's still going to be tough and it's still going to take some adapting to. So I think when a parent can make their home environment as stable and as predictable as possible, that will always help. So having some form of routine, so it'll obviously go from it being weekdays now to probably just kind of weekends and evenings, but having, whether that is an evening walk after school, or a long walk on the weekends, or, an exercise class or yoga or something that just provides some form of stability to them.
And something that I think they can do with their child, because obviously when you've been, it's kind of like a really extended summer holiday where you'll have spent a lot of time with your mum or dad, or mum and dad, depending on circumstances and whether they're working, not working, etc. Having their company, for a lot of children might be something that they've really enjoyed.
And it's interesting
to then lose
that.
So it's something they can do, after work with them, whether it's just, as you say, like a yoga session, something fun with them in the evening. It's that quality time as well.
Definitely. And that's what I heard first time around in first lockdown was, it's, parents aren't as busy. I mean, obviously some parents were even more busy, but for a lot of them, they were working from home, or their hours were cut, or they were furloughed. And it was really nice for children to feel like mum or dad or caregivers were at home and had that time. So I think you're right. I think that's really important, and a priority is still having that special time. And it might not be as much, but that doesn't really matter. It's about making the most of the time you do have. And I think, I think what Joe Wicks did right at the start of lockdown was brilliant in getting families and households involved in fitness. It's interesting because I was speaking to a member of staff here, a PE teacher, and we were talking about our experiences of PE as students, and basically we were both saying we hated sport. I hated sport growing up all the way through school. I hated PE, would do anything to get out of it, and I just associated PE and sport with exercise, so I automatically hated exercise. And so it wasn't until I was in university that I really got into fitness. But I think now with Joe Wicks and the introduction of these kind of fitness videos, it's really nice, not only for the children that were missing the sports side of things, but for the children that didn't like PE, that didn't like being in a team sport. It's a different way of exercising, and it's a way that they can do it independently or at home. And so I think that's really nice that it's introduced a different way of keeping fit. And like you said, with parents or siblings or friends, I think that's been a really good addition, and something definitely worth keeping up, even when lockdown is over. I think it's a really good routine.
We saw somebody enter the competition the other day with a dance workout that they've got from YouTube. So it's what you've said. It's kind of my association of sport is very different. I was very competitive, so I still am very competitive. So I've always done sport competitively, so whether it be football or hockey or athletics or whatever. So that was my involvement. So I used to love PE for that reason. But you're so right in saying that, it's understanding that activity doesn't have to be this intense sports environment. It can be fun, yoga, dance, whatever it is. It's that different angle of looking at it that's key. That's really interesting to hear as well.
Yeah, and I think with activity as well, obviously a massive benefit is the physical aspect of it, but also mentally, it's brilliant for your mental health. And you don't have to do an hour-long intense HIIT or lifting workout for it to be beneficial. It can just be a walk in the park, or dancing to your favorite songs, or a bit of yoga if you're feeling stressed. It doesn't have to be intense for it to be beneficial. And I think again, it just comes into having some kind of routine. And especially with parents going back to work, if they are at this point, people are going to feel more tired. There's not as much time in the day, and it would be a shame if they've gotten into a habit of doing workouts or physical exercise or activity in any respect, for that to just fall by the wayside now that kids are back in school and evenings are a bit more hectic or whatever it is. And so it's maybe about substituting what worked for them in lockdown with something that will work with them now, and knowing that that's okay to do that swap.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've touched on it briefly already in terms of them going back to work, and some parents will have been furloughed. Just thinking for those parents, because they're saying they're extending, possibly, I think they announced it today, until September.
Yeah.
There may be some parents that are furloughed until September, and they've actually had their children around them. Almost been something that's kept them busy. With them going back to school, what would your advice be? You've mentioned about routine, but is there any other advice for them as well? Because the kids go back to school, now they may find their days less active or less busy. So how do they now deal with that?
I'd say first and foremost, be kind to yourself if it feels like a difficult transition. Again, that word comes up a lot because there has been so much change. Don't feel like every hour of your day has to be productive. This is a really unusual time, and probably not, hopefully, one we'll have again for a long time. So if you do find that there are hours where you don't have as much to do, use that to your advantage. Do something that you don't normally have the time or energy for. Do something that you haven't done for you for a long time, whether it's painting or writing or whatever used to bring you happiness, or something new that you want to try. And like you said, routine, I think is really key. And I think obviously keeping up with physical activity in some aspect, because again, your children absorb everything that's going on around them, and as parents, you are their strongest role models. And if you are seen to be disciplined, active, looking after yourself physically and mentally, they will take that on board. You're modeling it for them, and that is setting them up to have that same kind of healthy relationship with themselves as you do. And again, that doesn't mean you have to run 5K every day or run a marathon or anything like that. That can just be taking the time to do something that is going to be good for you.
Yeah, I mean that for me, I think it's probably the best incentive of any incentive, is to know that your actions can be or have that much of a positive impact on your children. So like for me, that's the incentive right there, is to go and do that.
Because you want your best. Yeah, completely. And I think as well, it's about bearing in mind if parents do have children that have gone back to school, appreciating that they're going to be more tired, they're probably going to be slightly worse behaved when they get home because the days feel really intense, they're overstimulated. And so, you know, that is kind of reflecting that back at them and saying, you know, I know that you're tired, I can see that you've had a long day, how about we do a mindfulness video or some yoga or go for a stroll, because that's teaching them to be in tune with their feelings and learning how to cope with them or regulate them using physical activity. Yeah. And I mean, there's so much research that shows that that's effective. And it, like you said right at the beginning, with, you know, we're noticing more and more that children are needing support with their mental health, and teenagers, of course. Absolutely. If we can do little things within the day that can kind of help combat some of the feelings, that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the conversations I've had with other people that have kindly given up their time have also mentioned about, you know, the little things. It's the small steps. It's setting small targets or small things to achieve one at a time, and the overall benefit is huge.
Yeah.
But just the tiny changes and steps in the right direction can have such a big impact, and that's come from people working in fitness with nutrition changes and like yourself on the psychology side as well. So it's really great to hear that consistent message, you know.
And I fully support that. And you know, even from a personal standpoint, it's so much better to do small and steady steps rather than all or nothing mindset, you know, whether it's kind of, well, I need to run 5k today or I'm not going to do anything, and thinking instead, you know what, I'm really tired today, I don't feel like doing a 5k, but I want to do something, so why don't I just go out and run for 10 minutes and then come home. You know, and that consistency is so much better than just scrapping things all together and, you know, slowly building up. And that's what I say to a lot of the older teenagers that I work with that are kind of getting into exercise or are struggling with their mental health and need some form of routine, is start small, you know, make it approachable and achievable, and then build from there, rather than setting these huge goals that just set you up for failure, and then you just feel disappointed. So
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's 100% right. And I mean, I think we've covered a lot of information there, and it's been absolutely brilliant. As I say, thank you so much for giving up your time. I really appreciate that.
Oh, no problem at all.
Everyone that watches will as well. Just as a reminder to anyone that watches, obviously, we have got the giveaway going on. There is a chance to win a prize, to go and get active, but obviously the deeper message is, I really want to hopefully see people engage and see the benefits of being active to their physical and their mental health. So hopefully people can see this, engage, and comment below, you know, their thoughts and comments, maybe questions that they may have for you, and we can get those answered as well.
Happy to answer.
Otherwise, to kind of sign us off, I'm going to throw it over to you. Just leave us with a message for anyone watching. It could be children, it could be adults, whatever you want, something you think they may need or want to hear.
Put me on the spot.
I know, right?
I think I kind of touched upon it briefly, but being kind to yourself, you know, this is, and I know everyone said this, unprecedented times, we're all sick of that phrase, but it is, you know, none of us have dealt with this before. We've all gone through a huge amount of changes, loss, stress, you know, it's been really, really tough. And I think it's important to be kind to yourself, recognize that we're probably very different people than we were a year ago, and just trying to listen to yourself and kind of notice what you need to be emotionally well. So whether that is taking some time to read your favorite book, or call a friend, or go for a walk to clear your head, or do some exercise, just put yourself first sometimes and look after yourself, because it has been really, really tough, and hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel. But it's been a tough year for everyone. It's important to practice self-compassion at this point in time.
Absolutely. That's perfect. That's a great message to leave on. So thank you. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and good luck with going back to school next week.
Thank you.
Cheers.